These are the test corrections for Chapter 8, Trigonometry. That was taken January 21st, 2016. Show all your works, receive credit, leave all your answers in simplest radical form, box your answers. Complete the table, simplify all ratios and round decimals to 4 decimal places. You were given a triangle, a right triangle, that only had 2 side lengths. That means in order to find the third side length, you had to use the Pythagorean Theorem. In the Pythagorean Theorem, c squared equals a squared plus b squared. Essentially, it's across c values across the right angle. That's the hypotenuse. 17 goes in there. 15 can be either a or b when you square them, and then subtract. Take the square root. That side here is 8. You're asked to find the sine of q. Sine of q, sine is the opposite over the hypotenuse starting at q. So the opposite side would be 8, and then hypotenuse would be 17. Your decimal would be 0.4706 using your calculator or a trig table that I will provide for you on the final. Each of these were 2 points per box, so that's 6 boxes, that would be 12 points. A lot of students probably couldn't calculate, for those who didn't calculate 8, and you just wrote something like PR over 17, I give you 1 point. Cosine of P, so ka toa, that's the adjacent over the hypotenuse, that's starting at P. So now everything changes based on where you start. So this would be the adjacent, and this would be the hypotenuse, so that would be 8 over 17. Remember, you know this is the adjacent because do the opposite and the hypotenuse first, then you'll identify the adjacent. If you put in your calculator cosine 8 over 17, enter, make sure it's in degree mode, you'll get this decimal. And tangent is, starting at P, is the opposite over the adjacent, that would be 15 over 8. So in your calculator, if you typed in tangent 15 over 8, you'll get this decimal. Remember, if your calculator can't do that, you can just type in 15 over 8, you'll get a decimal over 1, and you just type tangent of that decimal, and you'll get this one. Notice on this problem, though, you're not solving, you're basically solving for that angle in a way, or the ratio of that angle. So here you're not solving for an angle. It doesn't say solve that for that angle, angle P. That means you're not using the inverse button. Question number 4 is multiple choice. Name the hypotenuse of triangle XYZ. So look for X, Y, and Z. I'm looking for the right angle going across. There it is. It is YZ. Question number number 5. Name the sides opposite of bad picture. The answer is PR. Has anyone got to attempt what that says? P? Angle Q. And that would be P and R. Alright, thanks. There you go. Number 6. When do you use the inverse button? The inverse, remember, means it's like an exponent. It has like a little -1 button on your calculator. You only do that to find an angle measure. That would be K. Question number 7. If you want to buy me a high-end scanner, I would definitely appreciate it. Use the diagram at the right to find the expression that could calculate AC. So it has 2 letters here, so they want a length. They want to know what the hypotenuse is. Now, you might be saying, well, Mr. Ng, I can use the Pythagorean Theorem because I have 2 sides of a right triangle. You can't, because here on the multiple choice it doesn't have one of those. Okay, so basically what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to go through each of these problems to figure out which of these could get you AC. Now the answer is D. If you go to 25 degrees, which is here, and you did opposite, so that would be 20 over AC. And then you can just solve for AC. AC is equal to, so you do sine of 25 degrees equals 20 over AC, and you can just cross multiply and you get an equation that equals AC. Now this one here says sine of 25 degrees equals times 20, you'll realize when you're doing your cross multiplication that it won't work correctly. Okay? So remember, in this problem, you're going to have to use your cross multiplying. Question number 8. Using the trig table at the bottom of this problem to solve for x, round lengths to the nearest tenth. This side was the non-calculator side, that's why I provided you the table. There it is. Okay, and we're trying to solve for x. Well, if you look at the given information, you have x, 3, and 37, so the angle is your starting point. Your angle in trig problems is always your starting point. Then you just identify the sides. This is the opposite. This is the hypotenuse. This is the adjacent. So there, because you only have these two sides, opposite and adjacent, that's tangent. Tangent of 37 degrees equals opposite over the adjacent. So the opposite is x, the adjacent is 3. There you do cross multiply. You get x equals tangent of 37 times 3. Then you just look on your table, 37 degrees for tangent. That's 0.7536. There's my substitution. Multiply those two numbers. There's my work. And you'll get x is approximately 2.2608 or 2.3. Question 9 to 12 says complete the equation, do not solve. So basically you're just setting it up. Again, we said solve, start with the angle here. Identify your sides. You don't have the opposite. You have the adjacent, you have the hypotenuse, so that will be cosine. Cosine of 32 degrees equals x over 13. Question number 10. It's telling you it's going to be tangent of 52. So I'm going to go to 52 degrees. I know this is my opposite. I know this is my adjacent. This is the hypotenuse, which I don't have, so I already know it's tangent, right? Tangent of 52, so it's x over 10. Opposite over the adjacent. Question number 11. I have these three information, 7x and 70. It's telling you where to start, so start at 70. It's telling you the answer is already signed, so that would be opposite over the hypotenuse, x over 7. So you would have an added x here. Okay. Question number 12 is a little tricky. They give you 55 degrees, okay, and you think to start there. So it tells you tangent. So if you did opposite over the adjacent, that would be x over 5. But the problem does not say x over 5. So we learned that you can use the triangle sum theorem. Blank plus blank equals 180. So if this is 90 and this is 55, this has to be 35. Now let's try tangent there. Opposite over the adjacent. So that would be 5 over x. Therefore, you're going to put 35 degrees here, not 55. That side was out of 32. Let's go on to question number 13. Solve for x, round to the nearest tenth. I told you guys to cross off that number and write 65. So here's my starting point. You don't have anything over here, and you have this one. So this would be the opposite, but we're not going to use it. You have adjacent, you have the hypotenuse. You're going to have cosine of 65 equals your adjacent over your hypotenuse. Your adjacent is x. Your hypotenuse is 5. You're just going to cross multiply, so 5 times cosine of 65. And you have 1 times x, which is just x. And if you just multiply those two numbers together in your calculators, you'll get approximately 2.1. Remember, now it says round to the nearest tenth. In these problems, if you just found the correct trig ratio, if you knew it was cosine, it gave you 2 out of 4 points for free response. Question number 14, given an angle, find the trig ratio, round to the nearest 10 thousandths. 10 thousandths is how many decimal places cost? It's 4. So that means you're going to have to look at 5 of them. Okay? So you just type into your calculator sine of 42. You'll get a bunch of numbers. I wrote down the first 5 numbers, and this number is 5 or less. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Therefore, this stays. Okay. Here you just type in cosine of 85 degrees. You'll get these 5 decimals. Remember, look at the 5th one. This one is 5 or higher, so this number goes up. That 1 turns into a 2. Tangent of 63. Type that into your calculator. Now that whole number you're not looking at. You're looking at the 5th decimal place, which is called, or this is the 10 thousandths. This is the I think they call that the 100,000ths. So then this number is less than 5, so you're around that number, you're going to keep that number. Question number 15. Given the triangle ABC, find the measure of angle A. So here you're finding angle A. If you remember that question above, that multiple choice question, if you need to find an angle, that means you need to use the inverse. So you start at angle A here, and the two numbers that you have are 11 and 25. From angle A, this is the opposite, which you don't have. You have the adjacent, you have the hypotenuse. So that would be a cosine of A equals 11 over 25. We talked about how you're trying to solve for angle A, and to do that, you want to solve for it, meaning getting it by itself, so you're going to have to switch these, or in math we call that the inverse. When you take the inverse or switch, you do this -1 here. So cosine, the inverse of cosine of 11 over 25 equals A. So in your calculators you would type in 11 over 25, get a decimal, then press the inverse of cosine on your calculator and get 63.9 degrees. Question number 16, solve for x. Start at your angle, identify what you have. You don't have the opposite, you have the adjacent, you have the hypotenuse. So you'll have cosine of 50 equals the adjacent over the hypotenuse, which is x over 28. Here you're just going to cross multiply, and then you're going to, when you multiply, you'll get 17.99. Remember, you're rounding to the nearest tenths, which would be 18. You don't want me to say your name in the video because then it'll be on there, so be quiet. Question number 17. A building is 80 feet high, so draw a building. An observer stands that says 62.5 feet away. So here's the building. There's 62.5 feet away from the building and is looking up to the top of the building. He ponders the measurement of the angle of elevation. Remember, elevation is like an elevator looking up, so there it is, x. Determine the measure of angle of elevation, round to the nearest tenth. So if you just drew the correct picture, I gave you 2 points. If you understood the correct trig problem, I also gave you a minimum of 2 points. So here, you should recognize from the angle here, you have the opposite and you have the adjacent. That would be tangent. So tangent of this angle equals 80 over 62.5. Here you're doing the inverse because you're solving for an angle. Type in 80 divided by 62.5 and then press the inverse of tangent, or in your calculator that will look like this, 1.28, and then press the inverse of tangent, not just the tangent button, and you'll get approximately 52 degrees. Question number 18. An observer stands an unknown distance away from a building. So here's a building, but we don't know how far away they are, and is looking up to the top of the building. So there's the top of the building, and notes that the angle of elevation is 52 degrees. So this is 52 degrees. He also knows that the distance from where he is standing to the top of the building is 101.52 feet. There it is. Determine the height of the building. That would be x. Round your answer to the nearest tenth. So start with the angle. Label the information you have. This is the opposite. This is the hypotenuse. So sine of 52 is equal to the opposite over the hypotenuse, which would be x over 101.52. Go ahead and cross multiply there. You'll get sine of 52 times 101.52. And you'll get 79.99. Round to the nearest tenth means go to 80, approximately 80 feet. And the extra credit question is, you were just guessing. It was a girl, and her name is now Hadley.